Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are so excited about today. Soon, you'll hear from NBCDI's President and CEO, Dr. Leah Austin. Thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to engage with us in the chat. Be sure to share on social media. And also, as soon as this webinar is over, you will have an opportunity to download this amazing paper. Starting in about 2 minutes. Keep sharing where you're from and who you are in the chat. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm so excited to be with you all here today. Thank you for tuning in to this special presentation of our paper, Afrofuturism and Systems Change, Reclaiming Mental Models for Child Wellbeing. My name is Alicia Hardy, and I'm the Vice President of Policy and Research here at the National Black Child Development Institute. We look forward to sharing insights from this paper and engaging with you all as we interrogate the mental models that uphold current systems and impede our 8 essential outcomes from becoming a reality. We want to introduce you to our Afrofuturist mental models and unveil a new Afrofuturist systems design process that reimagines systems in order to build a world that Black children need and deserve. One that ensures they flourish with wonder, joy, beauty, and genius. Our hope for today is to be in conversation with you all. We want to know what resonates, what feels good, what doesn't. We are presenting this, we are aware, in 2025. So how does this change, affirm, or transform us? How can you use this tool in your work, and how can we collaborate in how we use this tool together? I'm so excited to be joined today by Dr. Austin, who is coming on camera momentarily. But until then, I will keep the presentation moving. If you all, before we get started, just want to hear, what are you excited about today? What are you hoping to walk away with, to learn, to hear? Thank you all for introducing yourselves in the chat, but we just want to hear, what made you tune in today? Why did you want to show up to our presentation to hear more about our paper? I too am an Afrofuturist nerd, so thank you. Yes, opportunity for future world building. Absolutely. A systems thinking approach, we all have different mental models and understanding of those others' mental models. What is Afrofuturism? I love that, Alice. We are definitely going to dive into that, talk more about what Afrofuturism is, what it means. We're definitely going to talk about what Afrofuturism means to policy and how it can advance systems change. Yes, we love the theme of Afrofuturism too. I'm loving this. Thank you all for being so engaging in the chat, for talking more about what you're hoping to hear. Yes, thinking beyond just the existing system, the importance of keeping our culture alive. You'll hear all about this in our presentation. Thank you all for that. So we can get things moving to the next slide. And I am, again, Alicia Hardy, the Vice President of Policy and Research here at the National Black Child Development Institute. I love working at the National Black Child Development Institute, where I can unapologetically center Black children and families. I have two beautiful Black children, my son Reggie, he's 11, and my daughter Robin, who is 7. And I'm so excited to really center them and center all the children that look like them, that don't look like them, that have the same experiences and identities, to center the diversity of what Blackness is and what Black identity and culture means. And I'm going to be joined shortly by Dr. Austin, who's having a little bit of technical difficulty, but the show will continue. All right, so who we are. NBCDI is mission-driven and vision-oriented. We are a civil rights organization that operates as a think and do tank. We think with a collective imagination, and we do this work through communal action, believing that it is at this interconnectedness that justice-led movements can come about. And on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about our values. Our work is anchored in our 3 core values: equity, justice, and Afrofuturism. Equity is not about giving anyone an advantage or more than their fair share. It's actually a continuous process that must be monitored, adjusted, and refined to ensure everyone's unique needs are met. In schools, equity looks like providing a student with autism an individualized education plan. That IEP details a continuous process that is monitored, adjusted, and refined through that child's educational journey. They don't get more than what they need, but they do get exactly what they need. And justice is the goal. Justice centers repair and restoration. It fixes what was damaged and rebuilds to a state of completeness. It requires eliminating disparities and committing to factors that protect us from harm. Justice for a child harmed at school looks like that child being apologized to by those that harmed them. School leadership putting in rules or policies that ensure that harm is not repeated. That student is checked on by their peers and by their community, and the rules are monitored continuously, as equity requires, continuous. And this protects not only that child, but all children. Afrofuturism is what guides our work. It is the recognition that the changes needed to realize liberated futures must come from the collective imaginations and visions of Black people. It is through this lens through which we envision a future which affirms Black identity and agency. It says that our collective histories, actions, and imaginations are necessary to realizing a world where the wonder, joy, beauty, and genius of Black children is uplifted, as it is and should be for all children. And I am joined by Dr. Austin. Dr. Austin, I'd love to pass it to you to talk more about our Village Network.
Awesome. Thank you, Alicia. As was mentioned, NBCDI is a civil rights organization that operates as a think and a do tank. Much of this work happens in relationship with our National Village Network, which is made up of 23 locations across 17 states and growing. These dynamic community leaders, many of whom are joining us today, have deep connections to Black children and families, and they carry out the mission of NBCDI by delivering programs, organizing parents and educators, and engaging in community-driven advocacy to shape and hold systems accountable to the achievement of our 8 essential outcomes. Our 8 essential outcomes are that every Black child, and we do mean every Black child, is born at a healthy weight, is seen as a child, has books and toys that reflect who they are and who they can be. They enjoy meals with vegetables, hang out on a safe and appropriate internet, live and play in safe communities, breathes clean air and drinks clean water, and attends a school that affirms and expands them. The 8 essential outcomes, which make up our Black child development framework, recognize that the first 8 years of a child's life are the foundational period of brain, self-identity, social, emotional, behavioral, and health development. This period of growth and development marks the beginning of a child's ability to understand how the world is structured and their position within it. Our 8 essential outcomes, which are kid approved, are foundational. They are what we want for every child. They are what every child should have. However, the reality is every Black child does not. And this is through no fault of their own. This is why our work is about changing the systems, not the children. We would love to pause for about 1 minute and ask you all, as you're taking in the 8 essential outcomes, to really engage with us. We would love you to share in a poll that will come up momentarily. Which of the 8 essential outcomes do you want to learn more about? Please choose one so that we can follow up with you and help you learn more about that outcome. All right, I hope that was enough time for everyone to be able to select the outcome that they want to learn more about. But if it wasn't, maybe you have more than one outcome, please feel free to add it into the chat and I will turn it over to Alicia so we can continue the presentation. You're on mute, Alicia.
Of course I am. Thank you so much. In this next section, we want to do some grounding in systems thinking and systems theory. Both are important foundations for the Afrofuturist systems design process we are excited to unveil today. So let's take a deeper look at systems theory and systems thinking. Afrofuturism envisions a present and future where liberation from oppressive systems designed to dehumanize and exclude Black people leads to collective freedom and equity across all areas of life for all people. Those that led, contributed, and fought for the civil rights of Black people, they were Afrofuturist. They envisioned, demanded, and worked to create a future of equal rights and access for Black people that benefited all people. Afrofuturism is an invaluable tool and a necessary lens for systems change. Systems are complex. They have many layers and moving parts that are deeply connected and rely on each other. This is the idea behind systems theory. It recognizes that parts of a system cannot be isolated and emphasizes the complex relationships between those parts. Some of those parts are the mindsets and values of people in a system. It's also the policies and regulations created from those mindsets, the institutions and agencies to enforce and monitor those policies and regulations, and the resources that are created based on values and ideas around need and who needs help. Systems can be large, like systems of education and health, but they are also smaller ecosystems that collectively create those larger systems. For example, a classroom is a smaller ecosystem that is part of a school system, which is one component of the broader education system. Systems thinking is a way of applying systems theory. It is a way to think about how those parts are connected, how they interact, and how they can work together or even work in conflict of each other. Systems thinking rejects bootstrap mentality, the idea that internal factors, making the right choices, doing the right things, and avoiding the wrong choices is a primary reason why people do well or not. Breaking down a system into individual parts or one individual part like personal choices and addressing it independently ignores important external factors, relationships, and interactions between parts of the entire system. Those relationships and interactions are important and provide context for solving complex systemic problems. Systems thinking through an Afrofuturist lens relies on those connections, but rejects the constraints of the existing system and how we prove to solve those complex problems. On the next slide, let's take a closer look at a model for systems thinking that is a practical application for systems theory. So the iceberg model for systems thinking was created by Edward Hall and was later popularized by Peter Senge. It focuses on 4 core elements within a system: surface level events, patterns and trends developed over time, structures such as policies, funding, decision-making, and programs, and finally, at the root of every system are mental models that people have. As a model for system thinking, it recognizes that each of those pieces are interconnected and interdependent. For example, the essential outcome that every Black child is born at a healthy weight of 5.5 pounds, of at least 5.5 pounds, is a surface level event. It is a result of long-term patterns and trends of poor Black maternal health, including avoidable complications and the devastating loss of far too many Black women and birthing people. Those patterns and trends are a result of underlying structures such as policies, programs, and resources that were designed to educate Black women and birthing people to adopt positive prenatal practices and discourage them from eating unhealthily, smoking, drinking, and neglecting positive prenatal practices. This approach is a direct result of the mental model or the mindset of people in positions of power that have created those structures. And despite research that says otherwise, the current mental model isolates the individual choices and characteristics of Black women and birthing people as the main reason for the low birth weight of Black babies. Mental models, and that is done falsely, to be clear. Mental models are the foundation of all systems. They are the mindsets, assumptions, and values and beliefs of people. Mental models dictate underlying structures based on perceptions about people, what people deserve and what they need, and whether and how public resources should be used to meet those needs. Those mental models shape structures including policies, programs, and institutions, mechanisms for building and allocating resources, rules and regulations, as well as implementation strategy. Those structures lead to patterns and trends, and ultimately those trends, as they develop, lead to events or problems that we see, experience, and seek to address. Systems thinking helps us solve problems within the existing system, which is important in the short term to address immediate needs. But in the long term, we need new systems rooted in new mental models. So let's take a look at what those mental models in our Afrofuturist systems design process looks like.
So Afrofuturism, and feel free if you are familiar with this term to say yes, no, maybe so in the chats, to use the participation button and give reactions to the term Afrofuturism. Here's what I want to say about Afrofuturism. Afrofuturism is a term that is often connected with the Black Panther movies. Wonderful movies, right? And that's not wrong, right? Especially if you understand that both the production of the movies and the movies themselves, like the creation of Wakanda, was not simply fantasy or just people in the clouds detached from reality. It was systematic, it was practical, and tangible. We at NBCDI have spent the last year or so developing our own systematic process for achieving our 8 essential outcomes. And that process is our Afrofuturist systems design process, which I have to say we are beyond excited to be able to present this to you all today. This process builds on the iceberg model in that it moves beyond interconnected elements within a system to really building completely new systems that are rooted in the knowledge, experience, and expertise of those most impacted, Black people. Alicia will walk through the process in detail, but I actually want to overemphasize that being an Afrofuturist is not just about science fiction. Any one of you who are dreaming, planning, working towards building a better world, a better future for Black children, you are an Afrofuturist. We felt that there was a need to create a process that is systematic, that is practical, and that is tangible so that it can be accessible to anyone from an educator, a researcher, advocate, even a parent. So as Alicia walks us through the process, I really encourage you to think about your role and how it embodies this process on a day-to-day basis.
So world building, it's a term that's closely associated with literature and storytelling that goes beyond simply describing places and people to creating intricate details that allow people to immerse themselves in a new reality. World building is what we're aiming to do. First, by creating the intricate details of the world we collectively envision, and then designing and implementing systems interventions to make that vision a reality. The process of world building identifies and meets immediate needs while also advancing us towards new systems that can achieve the 8 essential outcomes. On the next slide, let's finally take a look at our Afrofuturist systems design process. That is the tool that we are using to engage in world building, using Afrofuturism as a lens for systems change. So this is it, the Afrofuturist systems design process. Before I walk through it, I just want everyone to take a few seconds, breathe it in, take it in. And as you do in your reading, we just love for you to drop 1 or 2 words in the chat that jump out at you, that resonate with you, that make you feel seen, that just bring a new light and a new life to what you think about systems change. I see so many good things in the chat: resilience, reclaiming autonomy, ancestral wisdom, tangible realities, Sankofa, one of my faves too. So yes, as you all continue to write into the chat, what is resonating with you, what you're seeing, what jumps out at you, I'm gonna go ahead and take us through this beautiful process that we have created out of labor of love. So each stage of the Afrofuturist system design process is grounded in Black knowledge, experiences, and expertise. Beginning with the proximity expertise of our village network, they are a connection to Black communities across the country, identifying their needs, assets, and elevating their voices and experiences. It's also practitioners, those who are directly involved in supporting Black children's development, learning, and health, including educators and administrators, medical and health professionals, and direct service providers. This framework also relies on the knowledge, experience, and expertise that comes from Black families and research that elevates our community assets, knowledge, and experiences, that tells the true story of who we are, what we've endured, and how we have continued to overcome, and research that is community-centered and led. It's also driven by activists and advocates that are working toward the liberation, well-being, and thriving of Black communities. This is the foundation to all 3 stages of our process. It informs how and what we analyze in the current system. It shapes the design and implementation of systems interventions, and is essential to the vision of the world we are building. Now, looking at the first stage, systems analysis and mental models. Existing systems are not designed to achieve this 8 essential outcomes. They just simply never will. But to truly achieve them and beyond, we must create new systems. And that begins with the first stage of our process, analyzing the current system and existing mental models. Everyone has their own mental models, but shared mental models, especially those of people in positions of power, are what shape society. Shared mental models are how people with common cultural, racial, social backgrounds share similar assumptions, values, and beliefs. At their core, mental models are narratives. They are deeply embedded ways we understand and see the world. Those narratives are shaped by history and perceptions of history, and are knowingly and unknowingly formed over time. They act as an anchor that keeps all components of a system firmly in place. This means even if structural reforms are implemented or events are directly addressed, when mental models remain the same, the system will always revert to align with those mental models again. As we look back at our Black maternal health example, new programs, more funding, a specialized agency to address these issues, these are all important, helpful, and necessary. But if each of those structures are rooted in the mental model that Black women's choices and characteristics are to blame, those structures will lead back to the same events. This is because those structures ignore all the parts of the system and instead isolates the problem to changing Black women instead of changing the systems that harm us. So systems change is not possible when mental models remain the same. Therefore, it's critical to identify the existing mental models of the current system and how history shapes those mental models in the present. For Black people, part of that history is rooted in anti-Blackness, oppression, enslavement, and dehumanization at the hands of white people in positions of power with shared mental models. Another part of that history is the ancestral wisdom that adds to the depth of our community assets and Black cultural capital. And cultural capital is the inherent and curated knowledge, skills, and abilities of Black people that allows us to look back at our history, to guide us in the present and propel us towards the future. A perfect example of this are doulas. There's a deep ancestral history of birthing work that was carried here with us from the continent of Africa. That throughout history, this birthing work has centered Black women's knowledge, skills, and abilities to improve the birth outcomes and birthing experiences of all women. And today that practice continues to return. This is the principle of Sankofa in action, looking back to move forward. Yet the path forward will require new mental models created through the lens of Afrofuturism. And this is because the historic, intentional creation of systems to oppress and exclude Black people specifically is the foundation of inequities across all systems in the United States. So Afrofuturism is a necessary lens to create new mental models that can correct those inequities and achieve the 8 essential outcomes for Black children. Because when those outcomes are reality for Black children, they will be a reality for all children. So this is not a framework that is just for Black people or to affect systems change that only benefits Black people. It uses Afrofuturism as a tool for the betterment of all people. The next stage of the process focuses on designing and implementing systems interventions. Interventions build a bridge between the existing system and the world that it can achieve the 8 essential outcomes. By shifting mental models and creating new structures. And more than shifting mental models, we need to create completely new ones because mental models are narratives at their core. And narrative change is key to building this bridge. However, Black people have been historically cut off from the power and autonomy to shape the narratives of who we are, who we have been, and who we can become. Instead, those narratives have been rooted in deficits, ignore our true history, and are driven by capitalist values tied to our productivity and labor. Instead, systems interventions must focus on reclaiming Black autonomy to assert narratives that focus on Black joy, well-being, and empowerment. Narrative change must be centered in how we collectively engineer new systems through movement building and mobilization. And movement building must be from the bottom up. It starts with those closest to the problems because they have the necessary vision for the right solution. And that vision requires the necessary power, resources, and autonomy to identify and implement community-based solutions. Movement building is also horizontal. It harnesses the power of mobilizing or joining multiple movements across various systems to advance common goals for common good. Movement building and mobilization require convening, just as we're doing here today, and they're strengthened by communal imagining. or the ability to imagine unrestricted by the limitations, mental models, and structures of the existing systems. But convening in communal imagination must always center those who have the greatest potential to be harmed by systems, but are furthest from the power to change them. In the final stage of the process, we are working towards the Afrofuturism that we need and deserve in the world that can sustain the 8 essential outcomes for Black child development. In this new world, there will be many ideas and collective visions for what we see in this world, but rooted in what we see will be collective liberation. Black children will thrive from birth. There will be a return of autonomy and justice, and there will be restoration and repair that get us to the tangible realities that lead to the systems that we know are necessary for the futures that we deserve. We get ourselves to this future world through incremental changes that happen in the process of designing and implementing interventions. But as we work towards this world building, there will be a need for periods to adjust for resistance and resilience. Resilience is the ability to navigate systems through adversity, both interpersonal and systemic. And resilience is important. But in the face of oppressive systems, resilience exacts lasting and deep harms. And so resilience must be balanced with resistance. And resistance is something that is connected, deeply rooted in the Black identity. Our resistance has been to the benefit for our people and all people, as the example I used during the Civil Rights Movement. And because our resistance is to the benefit of all people, the principle of Ubuntu is so important to the work that we will do to collectively build this new world that we need and deserve. And Ubuntu is the idea that I am because we are. And we have to be collective and communal as we look towards this new world and this new future. But through the lens of Afrofuturism, we must center the thoughts, ideas, and visions of Black people. And so we are so excited to walk you through some of our existing mental models and Afrofuturist mental models.
Awesome. I am so excited. One, to just see the engagement in the chat. There's some amazing, wonderful, really thought-provoking questions and comments that our team is collecting. So thank you all for being so engaged. I did just see a question that came about that was asking if we will talk more about the interventions. And I just wanted to address that, yes, we will. We will not get to the intervention specifically in today's presentation, but we will subsequently and pretty soon, so stay tuned, talk in more depth about the interventions. They'll also be up on our website where you can get more information. But I wanted to address that and then also note that, as Alicia has mentioned, this is not a linear process, right? It's cyclical. But mental models are probably, I think we could all agree, the hardest to change. That's why they stick around for generations and generations. They're the hardest to change. And so we actually wanted to spend today really honing in as much as we could on the mental models instead of trying to throw the entire process at you outside of giving you like this overview. But please know that we will go deeply into each section of the process. As Alicia has noted, and I'll just quickly underline, mental models really dictate the underlying structures because they are based on our perceptions about people. And those perceptions then dictate what we believe people need and what they deserve. And when those structures are based on false mental models, we will find ourselves choosing resources, policies, and programs that continuously fail our communities. So the real important work for us is to interrogate these mental models. And here's part of the challenge. It's interrogating our own mental models as well. How do our mental models show up in our classrooms? How do they show up in the programs that we develop? What do we believe? Do we believe that we need to fix people or that we need to fix systems? This is all part of the results of the mental models that we bring to our work and our lives. So we want to spend the next few minutes examining the mental models that we feel impede the 8 essential outcomes from becoming real. And we want to explore, present to you all Afrofuturist mental models that we believe will help us build the world that we want. So first up, and just so you have a sense of the format, I'm going to quickly review the first 4, and then Alicia will jump in and she will review the second set of 4 mental models related to our 8 essential outcomes. So I hope you all can see the screen clearly, because I'm going to ask that you kind of read the screen as I'm talking and really take these mental models in, and again, examine them for yourselves. So this outcome is that every Black child breathes clean air and drinks clean water. The existing mental model is that every US citizen has access to clean air and clean water. So this really isn't, that shouldn't be a big deal, right? We believe that unless there's a crisis, like we saw happen in Flint, Michigan, or in Jackson, Mississippi, it's often believed that these are unexpected and they're unavoidable, and the public is made aware when they happen. So we're led to believe that efforts like sending bottled water, which is a really wonderful thing to do, right? But we are sort of tricked into believing, we're led to believe that these efforts fix the issue because the event is now over. This mental model actually ignores that decisions are made. Community zoning laws are in effect, like where to put highways, where to put industrial plants. These decisions create inequities in the water systems and the air quality of mostly Black neighborhoods. In fact, a while ago in my career, I worked at an early childhood center, and it was directly across the street from a gas station and less than a mile from a highway. And it may not come to you all as a surprise, there were high asthma rates present in that community. We believe that Black children and families will only be afforded reliable access to clean air and clean water. And I saw someone put it in the chat, when it is considered as a civil right. Yes, it is an environmental justice issue, and we have to create an infrastructure that is designed to meet this expectation that it is truly a civil right that every child, every person have clean air and clean water. We can go, thank you. So the next outcome, and I'm also just noting time. So want to present this outcome. And again, have you all read along with me and really take in and examine these mental models. So this is one that we are absolutely seeing on a daily basis, right? We are seeing and hearing that the school curriculum, the pedagogy should not be political. And it is political, it's considered controversial, it's divisive. If we are teaching Black history, if we're teaching Black culture, if we are teaching or mentioning anything about the Black experience, then it is considered political, controversial, and divisive. We're told, based on this mental model, that it would distract from the learning that schools are responsible for. And so what then happens? Our children are presented a curriculum that doesn't affirm them, it doesn't expand them, they don't learn about themselves. And what I always note, which I feel is so important, is that our children don't actually learn about each other. And not just our children, not just Black children, but white children, all children. They also aren't expanded because they don't learn about each other. So we really need to ensure that our schools, our care settings can affirm and expand Black children. And that if that does not happen, then their learning is not happening. The next outcome is around children, every Black child living and playing in a safe community. And so the mental model here is that it's really about individual behaviors, that the harm, that the lack of safety in Black communities is a result of Black people, that somehow Black people are just like inherently violent. And, you know, what do we see? We see a lot of gun control programs. And are guns an issue in our communities? Are they an issue in our country? Absolutely. But what we also know is that it's not about individual issues or that our community has some sort of love for guns and we're inherently violent. It is really that we have to think about safety from more than just a physical perspective, but that it is about safety from the systems, safety from the narratives that adultify our children, safety from people that threaten the very security that our children need and deserve so that they can be free, free to learn, to grow, to explore, to thrive. And one of my personal favorites, to just be children without some immediate end goal of success and achievement. Just let's let children be safe to be children. And that is really what the Afrofuturist mental model associated with this outcome is. We can go to the next outcome. So every Black child having or hanging out on a safe and appropriate internet. Here's what we see here, that the existing mental model is, again, about individual responsibility, that parents need to better supervise their children. They need to figure out how to go way into the back of the device and figure out all the parental controls and supervision buttons, right? Is that important? Absolutely. But those are not the primary factors in maintaining a child's safety and ensuring that the digital literacy landscape reflects them. What we really need is we need a framework that holds the tech system accountable to making sure that they ground all technology creation is grounded in digital inclusion, that we're really looking at the ethics of the algorithm. We're ensuring that this AI, that technology is created with integrity, and that we are okay to advocate for and to ban harmful technology. Technology should be about transformation. It should not be about harm. And we have to be willing and really focused to hold the system accountable to not harm our children with the lack of digital safety that they often experience. I will now turn it over to Alicia, who will share some of the mental models that are associated with our additional outcomes.
Thanks, Dr. Austin. So every Black child is born at a healthy weight. I've, throughout this presentation, talked about the existing mental model around this outcome, but the Afrofuturist mental model is that Black women and birthing people, our partners and families, must be centered and have the power to lead studies that are solely focused on Black maternal health and its connections to low birth weight. We must design these studies, decide what data are collected, what is measured, and the narratives that shape those data. Current research and data does not fully uncover the full systemic factors that lead to the disproportionate low birth weight of Black babies. We must have the power and autonomy to use research, narratives, and history to create new mental models that we can use to build new structures that are rooted in the restoration and repair of the specific ways systems have harmed and diminished Black women and birthing people. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the essential outcome that every Black child has books and toys that reflect who they are and can be. Reading is fundamental. The importance of reading is not up for debate, and learning happens through play. Children play with toys and create these intricate stories and imagine worlds that our adult brains can't even comprehend. But it brings them so much joy and helps them rationalize the world around them. But the existing mental model stops there. As long as Black children have access to books and toys, who is centered or who's reflected should not matter. In fact, as we all know, there is a distinct pushback, as Dr. Austin talked about, on ensuring access to books and toys that explore Black culture, identity, experiences, joys, triumphs, in favor for this illusion of objectivity. We know that objectivity never happens. Someone is always going to be centered. And as Dr. Austin noted, there's an idea that Black identity is controversial or will indoctrinate other children. This means that in children's learning and care environments, the importance of having books and toys is elevated, but often marginalizes books and toys that represent the fullness of Black identity and experiences. When Black and other children do not see these representations, it sends a signal that Black children, their identities and experiences are unimportant. An extremely harmful notion that is embedded in the first 8 years, doing during the first 8 years during such a critical period of self-identity development. Instead, our Afrofuturist mental model emphasizes the critical nature of Black children having access to culturally affirming, responsive, reflective, and phenotypically accurate learning materials. This must be the basis from which we build new systems with abundant access and amplification of these materials. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about the existing mental model and Afrofuturist mental model of every Black child is seen as a child. Black children are children, yet their behaviors, interactions, mannerisms are often rationalized in a way that sees them as older and aligns their behaviors and needs with that of older children or even adults. In fact, Black children are often expected to maintain a certain level of resilience in the face of repeated racialized trauma that happens knowingly and unknowingly from adults and their peers. This existing mental model is directly connected to the enslavement and dehumanization of Black people during the period of chattel slavery in Americas, a fate that Black children were not spared. And today, it shows up as adultification, or seeing and treating Black children as older and needing less affection, positive attention, and other protections that are offered to afforded to other children. Instead, they are often treated as mini adults. The adultification takes the form of disproportionate and harsh punishment disguised as discipline in learning and care settings. Our Afrofuturist mental model rejects these ideas. It emphasizes the need for Black children to be afforded the innocence and protection that is inherent to childhood. And it emphasizes the additional specific protections that Black children need, including protection against racialized trauma, adultification bias, dehumanization, and anti-Blackness. Black children deserve to be seen and treated as children, and their childhood should be centered on being the beautiful, joyful, brilliant beings they are, and not focused on anti-Black ideas of who they may become. And finally, every Black child enjoys meals with vegetables. Much of what we hear about the eating habits of Black families is rooted in negative stereotypes about the food choices we make. There's a narrative that drives the mental model that we prefer and primarily eat junk food and fatty foods high in sugar. This narrative insists that the ways of eating are a part of our culture, or that we don't want to take the time or make the effort to eat healthily. And instead, we buy our kids Takis and hot Cheetos and sugary drinks because we don't know any better and we aren't aware of the health consequences. This mental model drives structures and programs that are centered on the individual choices of Black people. Programs and resources focused on teaching us what to eat and how to prepare healthy food. While this is critical knowledge to have, it does not change the limited, costly, and inconveniently placed options that many Black people have. The existing mental models focuses on the choices we make instead of the choices we have. And the choices we have are because of deep inequities in access, affordability, and proximity to healthy foods. Our Afrofuturist mental model instead focuses on the entire system. It recognizes that Black people must be afforded the resources, autonomy, the ability to create better choices, to make them closer and more affordable to our communities. These are our Afrofuturist mental models that are meant to be counter narratives to existing mental models.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I wanted to jump in and do a few things. One, we just always need more time. I'll just put that out there. So we are going to figure that out. That is a promise we will make to you all. Have been, again, so thrilled to see the engagement in the chat. I wanted to address a question that I'm seeing has come up quite a bit, which is this question of what's next? How can I be involved? And so what's next? How can you be involved? I'm going to ask this, and you don't have to respond in any certain way, but Keke Palmer recently received an award at the NAACP Image Awards, and she did this really wonderful speech and talked about, if you haven't heard it, you should go listen to it, but she talked about how we should and we need to create our own tables. And so that is what's next for NBCDI. That is what we are working on. When we talk more deeply with you all about the interventions, you will note that as a theme, that they are really about the creation of our own tables. Yes, we do have a conference, which is another table of ours that you are welcome to join and come to. And I believe someone put in the chat that it's in October in Atlanta. And you also should look back at the map, go on our website, find one of our affiliates and join an affiliate. If you don't see one, talk to us about how you can start an affiliate and or become a member of the organization. Those are all ways for you to be a part of the collective action that will get us to these justice-led movements. I also wanted to just see, I know that we put in the chat if there are any questions, so I'm just kind of looking for some guidance. If there are any more questions we can answer in addition to that question that came up a lot around how folks can be involved in this work and get more information. Yes, so actually we can go to the next slide because ta-da, the report, the paper that we referenced and that we built this presentation around is absolutely available for you to download today. So we invite you to go to our website and to download the paper and to be in touch with us, engage with us on social media, ensure that we have your email addresses so that we can continue to invite you to more presentations. I want to see each of you at conference. I will just put that personal ask out there because our conference, one, is just phenomenal. Two, the conference will be designed around the Afrofuturist systems design process. And so if you want more information and you also want to really be a part of it being in real life and happening, then we invite you to attend conference as well. We have a few minutes and I do see a few questions. There's a question from Kanaya about pride in our Blackness, and love this question. And I will just quickly say to you that pride in our Blackness is throughout everything that we do. I'd say that specifically the outcome around affirmation and expansion, the two outcomes, affirmation and expansion, as well as books and toys that allow our children to see who they are and who they can be, are all about pride in Blackness. And part of that pride in Blackness is not only our own children developing that pride, but we need all children to develop and have a pride in Blackness, because that is what's going to change our world and make it, quite honestly, a better place. There's another question, and Alicia, I can bring you into the conversation. There's a question that we have received around how can folks help us to build the tables? Oh, I love this question. To build the tables that benefit our children.
Yes, thank you. That is a phenomenal question. And the first thing I'm going to say is join a village. Where is your local village? Start a village, join a village. This is a way that we have tables across the country that we are creating. And that is building up to the systems that we are seeking to build through Afrofuturism. It's so important to join your local village. Also, ask us questions as you're doing right now. Read the paper, go through it, email us, ask us questions. Have us come and talk to organizations where you are. Let us partner and think about what this means across all of our outcomes and how this framework is possible for not just NBCDI, but a part of a collaborative idea and imagining and work that we're collectively doing to get to those 8 essential outcomes and beyond, honestly. Dr. Austin, did you have any? Yeah.
Thank you. No, I think you answered that perfectly. There's another question that is from Tasha. And her question is, will NBCDI set up some calls to action that center individual outcomes that invite our community to contribute to specific action steps? The short answer is yes. Thank you for that question. Yes, we will be doing that, and also welcome any support. So I will just say on behalf of my amazing team that we are a small but mighty team. And so if folks out there have, expertise there, have resources, want to be a part of a call to action strategy, we welcome your support in that way. But that is absolutely something that we have been thinking about and are beginning to plan some work around. So thank you for that question. So important that we're inviting our community to contribute to specific action steps. So really appreciate that question. I think we probably have time for one more question. I do recognize that as soon as I said that, the clock hit 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you do need to leave, again, just thank you so much for being here. The question that I see is from Ed Green. How will the Afrofuturism mindset and mental model become part of the organization's recruiting efforts to grow new NBCDI village members and or private public supporters to underwrite this work? That's a big question for the time that we have left. But what I will say is that in every aspect of our work, this process is not just for us to put in a paper and then say, hey, this is something like shiny and new we've created. It has already been informing every aspect of our work, from our recruitment of villages, our recruitment of staff, funders that we're talking to. We had a session last Friday where we did talk to and present the process to some of our funder partners. And so we are absolutely using this on a daily basis, Ed. So thank you for that wonderful question. So with that, again, thank you all for being with us. Alicia, thank you for co-presenting with me and for being such a dynamic force and bringing your brilliance and your commitment to Black children to the fruition of this paper.
It was my honor.
Thank you. And please have a wonderful day and have exactly the kind of weekend that you want.